Well, I'll speak to Dr Nishan de Mel, who's Executive Director at Verite Research. It's a think tank based in the Sri Lankan capital, Colombo. Welcome to World Business Report. Good to see you. Talk to me, first of all, if you will, about how Sri Lanka has got into this position. And we know, like many countries around the world, it is struggling because of the pandemic.
I think Sri Lanka had an additional factor, Ben, in addition to the pandemic, which was a tax cut end of 2019, which reduced government revenue by about 25%. That led to a ratings downgrade in mid-2020, which locked Sri Lanka out of the world financial markets. But it has continued then to pay its international bondholders and speedily reduce its reserves. So reserves fell from over 4 months to under 1 month by November 2021, which is what got Sri Lanka into this situation, being unable to borrow in international financial markets while continuing to service its debt.
And so one of those solutions, it seems, is asking China for a little bit of financial help in restructuring some of those debts. As always in this situation, though, we might wonder what China wants in return.
So I think Sri Lanka had hope in China in two ways. China has built a very impressive port city in Sri Lanka. And in 2020 and 2021, Sri Lanka authorized sweeping concessions on taxations, on regulations that hugely incentivized or gave better terms of treatment to investors in the port city. There was an expectation then that investment would flow in and Sri Lanka's debt repayment problems would be solved because the reserves would be built up by investment to the port city. Now, that did not materialize. And today, Sri Lanka is seeking a more limited assistance of restructuring the other bilateral debt they have with China.
And is there any concern where you are about the precedent, perhaps, that this sets between countries asking China for help and also the country's indebtedness to a nation like China?
I think with regard to indebtedness, Sri Lanka has about 23% of its international debt with China. And that is not the most critical debt because the sovereign bonds that account for at least 40% of the international debt becomes more pressing. But I think it's perhaps a strategic mistake to expect one country to bail you out and provide these kinds of regulatory tax concessions that are not necessarily optimal for the economy, in the hope that they will result in a reciprocative assistance, which has not materialized in Sri Lanka's case.
And talk to me then about what other options Sri Lanka might have in terms of, if it's not going to look at China for that financial help, where else might that money be forthcoming from?
I think Sri Lanka does not have a source of funding to solve its current debt problem. It has to immediately suspend the debt payments, restructure the debt like Ecuador, Argentina even did last year, and seek to build back the confidence of international markets through appropriate economic reforms, build up the reserves and the ratings that way. I think there is no one coming to rescue Sri Lanka at this stage. And that is perhaps the lesson to learn, that you have to govern your country well and manage your economy well, that bad governance and management cannot be rescued through international help. And the cost of trying to attempt such a rescue can be too high.
Yeah, absolutely. A message for many around the world right now after what we've all been through as part of this pandemic. We're grateful for your time, Dr Nishan de Mel there in Colombo. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.